In this video, we'll take a tour of Total Grant Solution, TGS, and see demonstrated some of the ways that you will interact with the system to submit invoices, check your grant or contract budget line item balances, add, delete, and edit user accounts for your agency, and run some basic reports. OEWD has been using TGS for several years with a pool of grantees funded by the department's more restrictive federal sources that require an intensive level of tracking and auditing. So it's not a new system for the department, but we are expanding it now in fiscal year 17-18 to cover the financial reporting for the majority of the department's grant and contract portfolio. You may be wondering, why do two systems exist? TGS allows OEWD to gather from grantees and contractors spending and budget information at a more granular level than the current functionality provided by the supplier portal. TGS allows for transparent submission, review, correction if needed, and payment approval tracking processes. Agencies and OEWD can both track the flow of submitted requests and their associated documents quickly and easily through the system's dashboards. It also provides a centralized place for the city and agencies to retain historical information on payments, submissions, and deliverables. Agencies will still need to ensure that payment addresses and bank account information is maintained in the main city supplier portal. For more information on that system, please visit the SF City Partner website. The website there is on the screen. So what process is TGS replacing? Previously, OEWD grantees and contractors would send their monthly requests to an OEWD-specific account payable email address. However, with TGS, it'll be more efficient because there's one central portal that both agency and OEWD staff are using, and that one central place will provide easy dashboards and will also retain all the submitted information and communication by project. There are a few main ways that agencies, consultants, grantees, contractors, and OEWD interact with TGS. One is to create, adjust, and deactivate users with view and/or submission roles. That's an agency responsibility. One is to submit invoices to OEWD for payment, also an agency responsibility. Third is to review and approve or request corrections to invoices. That's an OEWD responsibility. And the last is to view dashboards, reports, and historical information, including source documents. And that's done by both agencies and OEWD. There are three main types of accounts that users may have in TGS. Each agency has at least one organizational administrator or org admin account. This is the master account that has permission to complete and edit information about the agency, set up and edit user accounts for the agency, and also submit invoices. When OEWD is using the online RFP module, the org admin is also the level user that will submit proposals on behalf of your organization. OEWD recommends that each entity also create and assign a backup org admin account. Each account created in TGS is associated with a specific person and a particular email, so it's important that each staff member has their own credentials. There is no limit to the number of logons that you as an agency can create. In addition to the org admin being the only level of permissions that can submit invoices on behalf of the organization, auto-generated emails are sent to the org admins when payments are rejected. So it's important to make sure that this level of account sits with the correct level of persons within your organization. Additionally, each org admin can create additional view-only and/or financial data entry-only user accounts as they see fit. The data entry level of permissions allows the user to enter invoice information, including attaching documents, in 7C² and save. An org admin level user must still review and submit the invoice, however. Data entry only permissions do not allow the user to see the submit button on the final screen. View-only accounts will allow an agency's user to see historic and current submission and payment details, but will not allow them to make any changes. Again, it's up to each agency to determine which staff should have access to TGS and at what permission level. All staff users have full ability to create and run reports. There are many modules within TGS, which you will see demonstrated in a moment. The three main ones that you will be using are agency information. This is where you will enter and update your mailing information, mission statement, board member information, and also create, adjust, and sunset user accounts. 7C Squared, where you'll submit your monthly invoices and also where you can go back and view the historical invoices. And Report Builder, where you can run queries to export to Excel or PDF. You can also view source documents that have been uploaded against invoices and other historical information. Now let's go ahead and take a tour of the system itself. For this demonstration, I'm using an org admin level account, so we can see all the functionality of TGS. If when you get into TGS you don't see the same screens, please call your grant coordinator at OEWD, as you may need help setting the permissions for your account. So I'm going to begin by logging in with my user ID and password. And what I will see is I'll see a home screen here for TGS. There may be messages posted. OEWD may post them here. Up here is what we call the switcher box. This is what will allow you to switch between modules within TGS. On that PowerPoint slide, I promised that there were three that we were going to look at today. One being agency information, one being 7C Squared, and one being Report Builder. So let's go ahead and start with agency information. I'm going to choose agency information and then click the Go just to the right. The other tools that are in the list you may or may not have access to, depending on the time of year or your permission levels. For example, RFP cycles or things like that. Also, Axiom, you'll see in the list, is an internal tool that OEWD staff use. If, though, you try to choose something that you don't have access to, when you click Go, it'll let you know. So again, let's go ahead and start here with our agency information, and we're going to click Go right next to it to load that screen. The first time you log onto the system, you may need to complete several areas of the agency information screen. You can see at the top here there are three main tabs, and under each there are additional areas. I'd encourage you to review the information in each of these tabs and each of the sub areas and keep it updated. For the purposes of this training, though, we're going to focus on adding and editing users, which is under the General tab. Right here I'm going to flip now between the live system and a Word document so that we don't actually put anyone's login credentials on the screen. So, what I would normally do is go to Agency Users here, and what will happen is then the screen would refresh and drop me into this area in the system. Now you can see on each of the screens there's quite a bit of instruction on the screen itself. So to add users, I would simply scroll to the bottom of my user table. This may be really long, and click the Add User option here. What will happen then when I click this is you'll see that a new line will be added to the table at the very top of the table. So again, you may need to scroll up if you have a very long user table. You're going to go ahead and complete the information: last name, first name, password, user level that you wish to select for that person, and their email address. You can change this user ID to whatever you want it to be. For example, for my staff, I set it to a combination of their first and last names, so it was a little easier for them to remember. Same with the password, you can set it to whatever you like at this point. And your employees, when they log in, then they can reset this password if they want it to be more secure. Once you've completed the information in this line, then you want to go ahead and click Update, and the table will save then that new user. Note though that the table will reorder into alphabetical order by last name when you click Update. So you will no longer see this new user at the top, nor will it be at the bottom likely. It'll be somewhere in the middle. To edit a user's information, maybe they forgot their password, you want to reset it. Maybe you want to change a user's permission level so they can now enter information, whereas they only had view-only permissions before. To edit them, find their name in the table, click the Edit to the left of their name on the same line that they're in, and what will happen is then that record will reopen just in the same way it did when we added the new one. So all the fields available for entry will open back up for you again. You can change what you need to, and then go ahead and click Update on that line again to save the changes for that user. You also have delete capabilities. We'd encourage you not to delete users though. Instead, we recommend to edit the user account for the user that no longer needs access, change their access level to read-only, and reset their password to something that only you know and they don't. You'll want to do this if staff leave your organization or maybe move to another area of the organization where their job no longer requires them to deal with the invoicing process. That's all there is to managing your agency's users in 7C Squared. It's important to make sure that you deactivate folks when they no longer need access, especially staff who have permissions to submit information on your agency's behalf. If a user forgets their credentials, there are both password and user ID retrieval options on the initial login screen of TGS. If your agency has only one org admin account and that user no longer has access to the email associated with the account, you will need to contact your grant coordinator at OEWD for assistance to set up a new org admin for your agency. All other updates and retrievals you should be able to do on the site. The next area of TGS that we're going to take a look at is 7C Squared. Fun fact, this module was named 7C Squared because the software was developed in San Francisco, a city with an area of roughly 7 miles by 7 miles, or 7 squared. This module, or tool in TGS, has a few pop-up messages that will display as you go through it. So you want to make sure you turn off the pop-up blocker in your browser so you can see these messages. If the screen appears to refresh oddly, check and make sure you've allowed pop-up windows. Chrome, Internet Explorer, Safari, Firefox all have a little different way of doing this. So if you're not sure how to allow pop-ups on your browser, then you should be able to find instructions in the help area of the browser or by typing your request into an internet search. Just like the agency information area, 7C Squared can be found in the switcher box here at the top. So we're going to go ahead and select 7C Squared and click Go next to it to go into that module. "7C Squared is the module you will use to enter, submit, and track your payment requests or invoices. You will continue to negotiate your program or project budgets using the templates that your grant coordinator or project manager provide during your grant drafting phase. Once your agreement is fully countersigned, executed, and ready for billing, your grant coordinator will enter into TGS the agreed-to budget. You will only have access to bill then for budget line items that were approved during the negotiation. Those are the only ones you will see in TGS. If you need to modify your budget to increase, decrease, or add additional lines, you'll need to contact your grant coordinator to renegotiate those, and then they will update your budget in 7C Squared. Program officers, program managers, and project managers are a great resource to discuss any changes in programming and potential changes to your budget that you'll need, but final budget modification approval including making updates to your project budget in TGS, sits with your grant coordinator. You can see who your grant coordinator is and their contact information towards the top of the screen in 7C Squared once you choose the project you wish to work on. So in this example, I'm going to go ahead and pick project 1514. And again, because I'm using a dummy project, dummy system, it doesn't have the correct coordinator here, but normally I would see a staff member name and phone number for someone at 1 South Van Ness: Marissa, Will, Byron, Jenny, or someone else. You can always call the main number of OEWD's 1 South Van Ness Avenue office and ask to speak with a member of the contract management team if you aren't sure who your grant coordinator is and you need some additional help. The first time you submit an invoice against a project, the screen will look like this. The contract calendar table will build here at the bottom of the screen as you submit invoices each month, and it will retain that information. We'll look at another project here in a minute where you'll see some historical information here. To ensure that reporting is up to date, your agency should submit a monthly invoice through TGS by the invoicing deadline to report all charges for which you want to be reimbursed from the prior month. Generally, these invoicing deadlines are the 10th of the month for Workforce Development Division grantees and the 15th of the month for all other OEWD grantees. Some of OEWD's more restrictive funding sources, like WIOA, require the OEWD report expenditures timely to the state and/or federal agencies who oversee those funds. Though we know these deadlines are tight, they're necessary for the department to be able to aggregate spending information across many providers and meet the state's or Fed's reporting deadlines. If you have nothing to report, we request that you submit a zero invoice through TGS. That way, it allows us to best track spending and helps us ensure that agencies are both requesting reimbursements and getting paid promptly and timely. To begin entering your invoice, simply scroll down to the drop-down menus in the table area and follow the on-screen instructions. In the first drop-down here, select the reporting month. This will be the month your expenses belong to, not the month you're submitting your invoice. For example, it's mid-January, so I'm likely submitting my December invoice right now. So I would go ahead and choose December in the drop-down menu. Then you'll see that my screen has refreshed. On this screen, the system then asks you to select an activity and a fund, activity here, and fund here, in that order. For general funded projects, there will be only one selection available in each of these drop-downs. In activity, you'll see all activities, and then in fund, you'll see general fund. And then you'll see the approved budget for the project. If, however, you're a workforce development grantee with different activities and fund sources in your grant, this is how you report that level of detail. For example, WIOA grants from the Department of Labor require tracking and reporting of costs associated with client self-services or universal services, as well as client services that are staff-assisted and those that are training-related. The level of fiscal reporting in TGS mirrors the level of detail in your grant or contract budget. If your budget spreadsheet was split into multiple columns for different activities and/or different sources, then you should see the same level of detail here in the system. Again, this demonstration is done with a general funded project, which most grants are, so you only see one activity, which is all activities combined, and one fund source, which is general fund. To enter an amount for most line items, you can just directly type into the table by selecting the line that you need and typing in the amount of reimbursement that you want to request for the month that you are requesting. A few line items, like salaries and fringe, however, have additional details like staff member information or types of benefits. To enter an amount in those line items, you need to start by clicking on the magnifying glass to the left of the line, then completing the details in those subforms as they appear. So for the purpose of this demonstration, let's go ahead and enter a request for $1,200 for staff member Big Bird, who worked half-time or 0.5 FTE on this project in December. So start by clicking the magnifying glass to the left of the salaries line, the little circle with the V in it. Because this is the first invoice I'm submitting against this project, the only staff member that I see here is a placeholder that my grant coordinator created when they transferred my budget into the system. Once I add Big Bird into this invoice for December, though, when I go to report next month, he'll be available in the table. So I would see both the placeholder person and I would see Big Bird again. To add a new staff member, simply go ahead and type in their last name under the table and their first name, and then click on the link that says Add a Team Member to the right. Then I'll go ahead and fill out my additional details on him, like title, rate, hours, salary, and then break it up into actual and accrual. When I'm completing these screens, I want to remember that what I'm doing is invoicing. So I only want to put in here the amount of salary that I'm requesting reimbursement for. For example, if his full-time rate is $2,400 a month, but he only worked half-time on this particular project, I only want to request $1,200. If your staff member is hourly, please put in their hourly rate, the number of hours worked on the project, and the system will then calculate the total reimbursement amount of hours times rate. If, however, they're salaried or flat fee contract or something similar to that, you can bypass this calculation by entering the total amount you want to be reimbursed for that person in the Salary Direct column over here. Most reimbursement requests are going to be actual rather than accrual payments, because by the time you're reporting the expenses, your agency has likely already paid them out. Many federal sources, such as WIOA, must be reported on an accrual basis. So if there are costs that your agency has incurred, you have the bill in hand, but that have not yet been paid out, those may be requested in the accrual payment column. Again, remember that when you're invoicing for costs from the previous month. For more information on how accruals work and if they're appropriate for your specific project, please give your grant coordinator a call. Again, most general fund grants will only be reporting and requesting payment on actuals, and so you'll only want to use the actual payment columns in the salary detail page. So for our Big Bird example, I said I want reimbursed for $1,200 in direct salary, so my line will look like this, with 0 in the rate column, 0 in the hours column, $1,200 in the salary direct column, and $1,200 in the actual payment column. Then I'm going to click Update to the left of the line to save it. Here's a common error and troubleshooting tip. Let's say that you noticed that you hadn't requested enough on Big Bird. So you want to go in and you want to edit the amount of request. To edit him, click Edit on his line, go ahead and change what you need to, and then click Update again. So let's say you zero out, or actually leave blank, the rate and hours, and update his salary direct to $1,250. And then to save, you click Update again. The system will not allow you to leave both rate and hours blank. To fix it very easily, just put the zeros back in. Click Update again, and then it will go ahead and save your person with your changes. Now you notice here, I got another error message because now I've changed my salary direct, but I didn't change how that splits between actual and accrual. So when I change my salary direct, I also need to make sure that I change my split over here to the right so that everything equals now $12.50. Again, to change the line, click Update, and it'll save. Once you've cleared all the error messages, then your salary table will save just like this. Please note that if you're a contractor or consultant reporting your hours, your rates here that you're requesting must match the rates approved in your grant or contract budget. For example, if your executed contract shows an approved hourly rate of $200 an hour for your firm's principal, requesting $250 per hour here in TGS without first calling your grant coordinator to discuss if a budget modification is appropriate and available will likely result in your invoice being rejected back to you to adjust and resubmit. So if I had more staff to request payment for in December, I continue to add them in TGS in the same way that I added Big Bird and then edited his payment details. I'm finished with my staffing table though. So now that all my staff are in, I'm going to click the back button here on the right. Not the back button in my browser, but here on the screen where it says click here to return to the expense info form. That then gets me back to the main page where I can continue to enter details into the most of the line items or enter details into the subforms for the line items that have the magnifying V glass over here. If your project has a really long budget with lots of line items, you may find the additional category and subcategory filters to be helpful. But most budgets have 20 or fewer lines and are just as easy to deal with on the screen rather than filtering them down. So let's go ahead and add some FICA for Big Bird. Click the magnifying glass to the left to launch the subform. Click Edit to the left of the FICA line and enter the details. Again, the system will do the calculation for you based on the payroll total and the percentage you enter. If you need to, though, you can adjust the rates or the percentages to make the calculation match the correct amount that you've cost allocated to the grant for this month. For example, if I need to charge $80 flat in FICA because I'm leveraging some of the cost with agency funding, I could enter $80 into the payroll tax column and 100% into the rate column, and the system will show $80 is being requested as an actual expenditure. I'm going to leave this one alone though at $1,250 for my payroll, FICA at 7.65%, and you see here again the system has calculated my actual expenditure as payroll total times rate. To save this line, click Update to the left, and you'll notice that the total expenditure and the total actual has updated, as well as that line itself has saved. Once I'm happy with this subscreen, again, I click the back on the screen to return to the expense information form. If I had rent or indirect or any of these other lines to request, you see I can just type directly into them. Only the ones with the magnifying glass do I need to launch those subpages. Once I'm done entering expenses for everything that I have for that month, I'm going to go ahead and click Save Data at the bottom. And you notice that the system is showing me that the data is saved right underneath where I click that button. As a reminder, I'm only entering expenses for the month that I'm working on, for the combination of activities and fund that I have selected. So if I were a workforce development grantee with WIOA funding, which has multiple subfunds and also multiple activities, I may need to report against all those in the same manner that I created this table here. So you'd pick the next activity, pick the next fund, enter items in the table, save your data for each one before you move on. The next step is to view the entire invoice and upload your source documents for each line item that you're requesting reimbursement for. To view the consolidated invoice, click the 2 below the table where you saved. In order to upload documents to TGS, they will need to be in PDF format. If they're in another format, Word, etc., oftentimes you can use your print function in those programs to save them as PDF. Google and your other program help functions should be able to give you specific instructions. Most line items will need source documents to be provided each month. If you have questions about what kind of documentation is acceptable, or if you need to provide backup for particular lines, please reach out to your grant coordinator. Salary backup is the most often a payroll roster, ADP report, or something like that. Please redact information not needed, like all social security numbers and names, addresses, and other personal information on employees that appear on the roster but aren't being charged to the grant. Again, remember that these are city systems that several folks have access to. To upload documents, click on the Upload link to the right of the line that you want to upload a document for. Here I'm going to demo adding a payroll roster to my salary line. So I'm going to click Upload, and a pop-up window launches that asks me to choose the files from my computer that I want to upload. Again, you can only upload PDFs. The system will give you a red error message if you attempt to upload other file types. Click on the Choose File button, and then direct the file search to where your PDF document is. You can double-click on the file, or you can click on it and then click Open. You see now that my file is recognized here, so I'm going to click Upload Invoice Box. And it shows me here that my document has successfully uploaded. If I want to look at the file and make sure that it's the right one, I could click the Review box here and it would launch. Or if I've noticed that I actually attached the wrong one, I can choose that file again here and then delete it from this. Once I've added all the payroll registers or all the support documents for the particular line item that I've chosen, I'm going to click Close. And you'll see here that once there was a 0 in the uploaded column, now it shows that I've uploaded one document against my salary line item. Before submitting your invoice, make sure that you have at least one document showing uploaded for each item that needs support. Again, if you're unsure about which items need backup documents or what types of documents are acceptable, please reach out to your grant coordinator. On this screen, you can also see the total of each line item, as well as the remaining balance for each line item after this invoice is paid. You can see the total requested amount down at the bottom, and the total remaining balance for the project, again, after this invoice is honored. You won't be able to edit directly any information in this screen that you've input. So if you notice there's an error, click back on the 1 under the table and you can make the adjustment in the data entry screen. Again, if you need to go back and change salaries or fringe or anything with a subform, you're going to have to go back to the original subform to make those adjustments, and then save back through. Each time you submit an invoice, take a look at your balances here and make sure that they look like they'll cover the work remaining on the project. Again, the system will not allow you to make a request for more than a line item's balance, or request for reimbursement for lines other than those already pre-populated in the TGS budget, and those are based on your agreed to contract or grant budget. So if you notice you're getting close to fully expending a line item, or want to charge for items not currently recognized in the budget, contact your grant coordinator early to discuss budget modification options. Okay, so now I have a choice in my workflow. If I'm finished with my invoice and ready to submit, I can click the Submit button, which is over here on the right. If, however, I'm not ready to submit yet, I can click Save, which is just below it, and come back later to adjust it and submit. Data entry permission level users only see the Save and Cancel buttons. For them, there is no Submit button. An org admin will still need to log into TGS to review and submit the invoice on behalf of the organization. For this demo's purposes, I'm happy with my invoice, so I'm going to go ahead and submit. A couple of notes before we move on about zero invoices. I went back to the contract calendar and picked a clean month. So you'll notice now we're in February 2018, and that's why you don't see any expenditures here again, so that I could show you how to submit a zero invoice. If you're submitting a zero request, maybe your grant is one that's based on deliverables rather than cost reimbursement, and none of those have been completed this month, the system will allow you to submit a zero, but it will show a red message asking that you confirm. The $0 confirmation checkbox appears right below the Submit button, but will only show up after you attempt to submit a zero invoice. So again, I've switched to a different month so that I can show you how to do this. So I'll click Submit like I would with any other invoice, and you notice here it tells me now this is a $0 submission. Please correct the amount or check $0 submission and click Submit again. So if I'm confident that I don't want to request a reimbursement for this month, but I do want to submit this report so that you know that I, as an agency, have nothing to report, I'll go ahead and click this checkbox here that says $0 submission, and then click Submit again. And what appears then is a monthly program and cost report. You can print or save the document from here using the print option here. This will show up for every month right after you submit, and it's your invoice submission record. At the top, it shows you an overview of your grant, including everything that you've requested for that specific month, and the balances, how much you've requested for that month in total here, and the remaining balance on the project. Now remember, I've already worked up that December invoice and submitted it through the system. So even though it shows that I'm asking for $0 in this February request, it is showing that my starting balance, my ending balance are the same, but they're no longer a whole round number, because each month that I make a request, it continues to deduct from my grant balance. If you don't print this report when it pops up right now, or if you forgot to shut your pop-up blockers off and it didn't actually generate, you can generate this report later out of Report Builder, and it will show the original submission dates and all the correct information on the top at that time. A couple of notes about budgets with deliverables. A deliverable line item becomes payable when your OED program officer, project manager, or program manager confirms that the item has been received and meets the agreed to specifications. If you're invoicing for a deliverable line item, you must upload written confirmation from your PO or PM that the deliverable was accepted, and this confirmation must be dated within the term of your grant or contract agreement. You may additionally upload a copy of the deliverable itself if it's in PDF format, but the confirmation document is what's required. If you submit an invoice charging for a deliverable but don't upload the confirmation, then your grant coordinator will send it back to you requesting you either remove the deliverable from the request or upload the supporting confirmation. Additionally, grant coordinators may send back an invoice for corrections when they find the first error versus reviewing for all errors. If your invoice is rejected back to you for corrections, please review the entire submission again before resubmitting to make sure that you've caught any additional errors. So now that I've submitted my December and February invoices, I want to go back to my contract calendar and see how it's reflected there. So if I go back to the system, to the Financial Reporting tab right here in the middle, you can see that the contract calendar now shows that my December as well as my February invoices are submitted. When they're reviewed, approved, and ready for payment, you'll see the yellow light turn green and the status will go from pending to approved. If there are issues with either invoice and they're rejected, your org admin will receive an automated email when it's rejected. You'll likely get a follow-up email from your grant coordinator with details, and you'll see that the transaction status here in the system goes to rejected, and the yellow light will now be red. Let's jump to another project to see what that looks like and how to go back in and make adjustments and resubmit if your request is rejected. If you have multiple grants or contracts with OED that bill separately, you will have multiple projects in the 7C Square drop-down menu, just like we have for this demo. For this project, you can see some history of submissions, rejections, and approvals. What I can see from looking at this calendar and the order in which things are listed, here's what happened. First, the agency submitted an invoice for July on December 13th. Then the agency submitted the invoice for November on December 13th. Then the agency unlocked, adjusted, and resubmitted the December invoice on December 13th. For this project, you can see some history of submissions, rejections, and approvals. What I can see from looking at this calendar and the order in which things are listed, here's what happened. First, the agency submitted an invoice for July on December 13th. Then the agency submitted an invoice for November on December 13th. Then the July invoice was reviewed and rejected on December 13th by OED staff. Then the agency unlocked, adjusted, and resubmitted the invoice on December 13th for July. Then OED staff reviewed and approved the November invoice. Then OED staff reviewed and rejected again the July invoice. This is now the one that we're going to unlock for a second time, adjust again, and resubmit. The contract calendar will continue keeping record of every submission and every resubmission as we do this. To start, identify the transaction that you want to unlock and adjust. It'll be the last one in the list. So I'm going to click Unlock. Over here on the right, I can choose either of these lines. You'll see that as soon as I clicked Unlock, now all the July transactions have gone back to pending. So what I want to do is I want to choose the July month from the contract calendar in order to open the data entry screens again. Refer to the email sent by your grant coordinator identifying minimally the issues that cause the rejection. Remember that your grant coordinator may not identify all the issues with your invoice before rejecting it, so you will need to check and adjust what they identified as well as review the rest of the invoice to ensure the math is correct, the correct documents are uploaded for each line item, and that there are no ineligible costs being claimed. If there are items that you think your grant coordinator or program project manager may have questions about, I'd shoot them an email when you're submitting the invoice so that when they're reviewing it, they have the additional information or context. So now we're going to edit screen 1 the same way we did with the previous contract that we just demonstrated. If the line item has a magnifying glass on the left, like salaries and fringe, you'll need to click on the icon to launch the detail screen where you can enter and adjust the detail amounts. So I'm going to select all activities. I'm going to select general fund, which will then load my budget. This is a different project than the one that we were working on earlier, so the budget's a little bit different. If I need to adjust anything here in these two lines, I would click on the magnifying glass first, adjust in the subscreen, and then save. If I need to adjust any of the ones without magnifying glasses, then I can just type straight in. In screen 2 then is where you can upload documents and also delete or change things that you previously uploaded. Please don't upload information that's not needed, especially personal information of staff or clients that's not necessary. And also please remember that all Social Security numbers and addresses should be redacted. It's as easy as going over that information with a thick black marker before you scan and upload it. For the purposes of this demonstration, let's say the issue is that the rent support document I uploaded only provided support for part of what I charged. I can either fix by adjusting down my request or by uploading additional documents. Let's say my error was a typo in the amount, so we'll go ahead and adjust that down. I can't adjust it here in screen 2, however. I need to go back to screen 1 and adjust it here in my data entry screen. Save the data. Go back to screen 2. You'll see now that it is updated to $50 from the $100 that it was. And then I want to make sure that I upload my support documents here. It looks like I may have had 2 issues with this invoice. One, that I uploaded support to the wrong line item, which may or may not be a correct document. And 2, that there were some issues with the amount that I requested. Once I've fixed all my issues, then I'll go ahead and resubmit. So I want to fix this issue by uploading, choose the file, delete it, close. You'll notice now that I have no document attached to my salaries, which is fine because I'm not requesting any salaries. But I do then want to go ahead and upload documentation for my rent. So I'll click Upload again, choose a file from my computer. Again, only PDF documents. Click Upload Invoice. And once it says that the document is successfully uploaded, click Close. You'll see now that my rent has 1 piece of support documentation uploaded. And again, we're going to assume that I adjusted this correctly. So I can save it if I want, or I can go ahead and submit it from here. I'm going to go ahead and submit this request by clicking the Submit button. And again, my program and cost report will automatically generate so long as I have my pop-up blockers off. And this now shows me my new date and time that it was submitted for the month of July. Again, remember I'm adjusting that incorrect invoice. My balances in my table have updated, as well as all my payment request information. So I want to go ahead and save this monthly report or print it, one of the two. And then back in the system under the Financial Reporting tab, my July invoice is now pending again, waiting for my OEWD grant coordinator to review it. And you can see that my latest date up here has now updated. So now I have another July request. I can see that I unlocked it today, and then I went ahead and submitted it today, and it's pending. OEWD prefers that agencies submit 0 invoices for interim months and submit monthly billings in order. So if I'm looking at this project as a grant coordinator, I'm going to assume the agency has no costs for August, September, or October that they want to report, because they've reported July and they've now reported November. I might contact them and ask them to submit 0 invoices to confirm, or I may just go with my assumption. The reason we prefer that each month have a report, even if it's 0, is because then the project balances stay in line. If charges for October are entered now, TGS will still process that invoice, update the line item balances, and will update the balance taking all submissions into account. It just keeps the system and balance tracking cleaner if reporting is done every month in order. Once an invoice is approved in TGS, again, you'll see that invoice turn green in the contract calendar. It's then entered by OEWD's finance team into the main accounting system for the city, and payment in the form of an automatic deposit or check is generated and sent to you. The process from submission to payment should happen within 30 days, provided the invoice is correct and all necessary documents are uploaded. If an invoice is rejected, then the 30-day time frame starts over when the corrected invoice is resubmitted. The last tool or module that you'll likely use regularly in TGS is Report Builder. That demonstration is offered as a separate video in this suite of trainings. Please close this video and open the other for a step-by-step walkthrough of the reports and queries that will help you track and analyze your OED project spending.